Welcome back to the All Turtles podcast, a show about the future of health, the future of work, and the entrepreneurs who build that future. I'm John C. Fuentes, co-founder at All Turtles.
Oh, I'm Jessica Collier, CEO of Spot.
And I'm Phil Libin, the CEO of All Turtles. You're a co-founder of All Turtles too.
I am, that's right. Yeah.
It's like a lot, but I guess we can't all list all of our titles.
Right. I'm technically president of All Turtles France. That's the truth.
That's a true statement.
Yes, it is, yeah. So this is a kickoff for season 3. We intend to talk about, who knows what we'll talk about in the next few minutes, but we intend to talk about what we've been up to, what's to come on the podcast and for All Turtles. And let's talk just kind of how we want this show to evolve into some focused areas and some things, specific products that All Turtles is working on. Jessica, where do you summer?
I didn't summer anywhere this summer because I'm fundraising.
Not Martha's Vineyard?
No. Sadly, no. I aspire to summer.
Yeah. I also have not summered. Did you summer?
No, not at all.
None of us summered.
I summered in the 3rd floor at All Turtles.
Oh.
How well does this bode for our fall if none of us summered?
Yeah, that's a good point. I still feel refreshed. I'm ready to go. You?
Speak for yourself.
I graduated from college. That's what I did this summer.
Oh, wow.
You did? That's right.
I am no longer a college dropout. Well, no, actually, I guess I'm still technically a college dropout because I had been a dropout for like 20 some years, but then I just graduated. So I'm both.
You've made amends.
You can't be both.
Can't be both.
No, that's the thing about when someone gives you a degree. Well, I guess you finished, but when you get a degree, you no longer get to say you're a dropout. You're going to have to find something else to throw people off.
Oh, so tedious.
So what else did we do this summer? Well, in the show,
we did a lot of work.
Well, we did, yeah.
A ton of work.
Yeah. All of us look very tired.
We're all kind of blinking at each other right now because it was about the most intense few months. This has definitely been, it's been intense. It's just a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff.
So, and then we kind of brought this on ourselves, right? We kind of decided a couple of years ago that we were going to, hey, let's work on lots of 14 meaningful products at the same time.
Products at once, yeah.
Yeah, and they're
all
going
to be fine.
Yeah.
And now they're all like out in the world and doing things, or about to be out in the world and doing things. And turns out that's a lot.
Lots of stuff. Yeah. No time to summer in Hyannis or wherever.
Yeah.
Maybe next year.
But we did have fun kind of goofing off on the podcast a little bit this summer.
Podcast was great.
Yeah. So
we did a special series called SciFi-preneuership because it's really hard to come up with names. That name took us all of like 8 seconds. And then we were like, nope, that's the one that's going to be.
That's why you should never have code names, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I co-hosted it with Brittney Gallagher, who one or two of our loyal listeners might remember her from the last episode of season 1 of the All Turtles podcast, Galaxy Quest, which was our most popular episode. And we were talking about science fiction and how that shapes the way that people who build things in tech see themselves. Brittney and I co-hosted the show. Brittney got a bunch of really fascinating guests who are all like high-functioning folk in academia, in science, in entrepreneurship, and we talked about
The Matrix.
Yeah, the Matrix and Star Trek and a lot of Ursula Le Guin.
Keanu's really having a moment right now.
Oh gosh, we could do a tight 5 on Keanu right now pretty easily. Where can listeners find that? Is that just on the homepage somewhere?
It's on the internet. Is it on the internet?
I think it's
on the internet.
Yeah,
I think wherever you find your All Turtles podcast, it's right there.
Okay, great.
SciFi-preneuership. So I did a sci-fi podcast. What have you been up to?
So I've been doing a couple, just a few things. I'm fundraising for Spot. If anyone out there has money they would like to give me, you are
by the time this airs,
more than welcome to let me know. Yeah. I would be thrilled to pitch you.
My guess is by the time this airs, we'll be completely done with that.
The round will be oversubscribed, as they say.
Late.
Yeah. Too late. You didn't knock soon enough. No, but the fundraising is going well. It's definitely, it is a process. Meeting a lot of people, having a lot of conversations. It does. One of the things I've noticed is it really forces you to look at the things that are going well, without irony, which I think is not necessarily one of my strong suits. I tend to, even when I'm trying to talk about how things are going well, I tend to inject it with a heavy dose of like, snarkiness or side eye. And with fundraising, you have to look like right at how things are going and talk about the successes you've had. So that's been
which have been
kind of interesting
significant for Spot. So
Yeah,
I think
totally.
I think the fundraising is actually like not the most interesting stuff of what you guys have done with the team. So
No, but we do have 23 customers and growing, which is really exciting.
those are companies or
Companies,
governments, organizations.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Governments, yes. Governmental agencies trusting us with their harassment and discrimination reporting, which is exciting.
So many tens of thousands of people.
That's right. One of the things we spent time doing this summer was kind of deciding where the product was going to go next. So I can tell you a whole lot about the new laws that have been passed in New York and California that are going in California. The one is going into effect in January. And we are building harassment prevention training. Yay. I'm really excited about this. I was very skeptical about this at first. So we took some time over the summer and really dug into the laws and all the training that exists and kind of asked ourselves if we really thought that we could do a better job than what currently exists. And I will say that like one of the things that makes harassment training so often bad or poorly designed is that the laws are cumbersome, right? There's a lot of things that you have to include in harassment training that are just required by law. And one of those things, for example, is the time requirement. So if you're an employee, you have to have an hour of training. If you're a manager, you have to have 2 hours of training. So it doesn't really matter if all of the information could be conveyed in less time. You are required to fill that time. So we're trying to make it more nuanced, more interesting. We're kind of building like Instagram stories for harassment prevention training that'll be interactive and people can do them on their phones. We're going to release them like a series of rolling releases starting October 1st. So people will be able to like get compliant like 10 minutes a week over the course of 6 to 12 weeks, depending on if you're a manager or an employee. And everybody will be able to, if you're in California, be compliant in time for the January law. So it's really exciting.
It's an interesting thing. It's like I've, had to do a bunch of harassment training for, various companies that I've been either running or investing in. And yeah, like they all suck.
Yeah,
Just
they
like
suck.
not this words. Like these are important things, but like they're very poor quality.
And they were made they seem like they were made in like 1989.
And like I've always like as a CEO, like I've always felt really uncomfortable subjecting my employees to this because they felt insulting. They were produced so poorly that it actually felt belittling and insulting to like make people do it. To the point where I think at Evernote, where we had to do this just because we were big enough where it was mandatory required, we wound up paying a lot to have like humans come in and do the training, even though it was like 10 times, 20 times more expensive because like, we had like people who were professional to come in and do this and they were good. So like at the very least, it wasn't insulting. Whereas like all of the webinar stuff, all of the stuff that was canned, it was just so bad.
Right.
And I was actually worried about like, not only that would people just be like pissed off, insulted by it, but I thought like it might backfire because the last thing you want to do is get people to like roll their eyes at the concept of harassment and discrimination prevention. But
and
like,
then make jokes about it that then constitute harassment and discrimination.
right. But it's almost like you almost have to roll your eyes at the quality of the stuff because like it's very difficult to sit through something that's kind of that patronizing and not make a joke about it. Like you sort of almost feel stupid in front of your peers. So it's like, it's kind of a catch-22.
Well, and a lot of the research does show that a substantial amount of the time, the kind of training that is on the market currently does result in backlash. So what you see post-training is an uptick in the number of incidents of harassment and discrimination at a company, largely because there's backlash to the training itself.
Right.
To the fact that it's mandatory, to the fact that it's embarrassing, to the fact that it's unnuanced. It can make people dig in on previously held beliefs rather than like open up our minds to kind of accepting new ideas. So it has to be very carefully designed, which is what we're working on now. And I mean, to your point, so Evernote was hundreds of employees, but the new California law requires harassment prevention training for companies of 5 employees or more. And that includes part-time workers and temporary contractors. So it's like the smallest possible thing that you could have and actually call a company is now required to do this kind of training and to have a way to report things. So the legislation around all of this stuff the new legislation is historic. Like we haven't really seen anything like this before come from state governments. It's kind of an exciting time.
Yeah, and we don't want to see legislation like this lead to just a wide acceptance of poor quality stuff, which then sparks the backlash and the eye rolling, and it's kind of annoying. So hopefully we'll be able to do a better job.
I certainly hope so. We're definitely working on it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we are.
Whew, yeah.
Let's go to the themes. So all these changes bode well for companies, products like Spot, and workers of the world, I guess, in California and New York. And at All Turtles, we've kind of gravitated around 2 central themes and all the different stuff that we're working on. Spot is something that fits squarely in the future of work and the ways in which humans are in offices being productive, and kind of all the new products and ways of working that exist now that maybe weren't possible a few years ago. And then the other category is the future of health, where we have a bunch of stuff that is kind of squarely in this helping people be healthier. Is that just a function of what we're interested in, or is these just like the central problems of the world that...
I've actually been kind of like, as I've been talking about these in the past couple of months, I've been really kind of realizing that it's the same problem, that it's really like we're focusing on things that make people healthier and make companies healthier, things that make people better physically, mentally, things that make stronger cultures. Like I think a common theme is so much of the problems in the world right now are caused by just about everything we do being maladapted. Maladapted, like literally, scientifically speaking, meaning like so much of the stuff we do, how we talk, what we eat, how we travel, what kind of light we're under, how we like talk to each other and work together, all of this stuff is maladapted, meaning it isn't how the human body and mind like evolved to being.
Right.
And that's just unhealthy. And you see that stress, like you see that stress in individuals, but you also see it in companies and in societies. And it's like, it's not hard to just like pretty much anywhere you look, like you see things feeling like they're breaking because they're just like maladapted or unnatural or unhealthy. And I actually think that this is not a permanent state. This is how we got to, because we built a bunch of technologies and a bunch of structures without thinking about like, well, what actually fits into how people want to be or how people's bodies and minds work. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like we can change it. We can start building products that are better adapted and fix a lot of these things, fix a lot of people's physical health, mental health, workplace health, cultural health, all of that stuff. And that seems to be the common theme of what we're putting together. I've been talking about this concept of ergonomics. So like ergonomics traditionally, right, is just like it's a design of products, usually means physical products that are designed with the understanding of how the human body like moves and bends and like what's comfortable, right? So for most of the history of products, for thousands and thousands of years, like there was really no ergonomics because we were so constrained by our manufacturing techniques that the products were constrained by what could you manufacture. So like, for example, early cars all had like, straight edged wooden benches and like straight windshields, like not because like anyone thought those were super comfortable, because like that's all you could make. You could make a curved windshield. And then like after World War II, like starting in the 40s and 50s, we had more and more advances in manufacturing technology where we had plastics, we had different materials, we could make things curved. And all of a sudden there was this renaissance and like just products just got a lot better because like all of a sudden the technology got to the point where now designers could think about, well, like where does your arm go? Like how do you want to move? Again, in the car example, like early cars, like the knob that you rotate to, I don't know, do something with the engine, like it didn't matter like where it was comfortable for you to reach it. Like it mattered where it physically had to be because like it was connected by a metal thing to like the part of the engine because there was no like wires. But now, like if you look at a car, they're much more ergonomic because the technology like lets us design things around how human bodies actually are. And the next stage of that, I think, is cognitive ergonomics, right? Like now we understand how the human mind works, how our emotions work, to a much better state than we used to. And the technology is advanced enough where we can build products that aren't like the users don't have to contort themselves to fit into the product can try to fit around the user. And the next level of that is like social ergonomics. So it's like, it's interesting to ask like, what makes an ergonomic chair? But it's interesting to ask like, well, what makes an ergonomic life? What makes an ergonomic company? Like, what makes an ergonomic country? A country that's like comfortable for the people in it. And maybe comfortable is not like doesn't sound like an important enough word, but like maybe it is.
What if the answer to that is just like not capitalism?
Well, I think this is I think a thing that I've been increasingly frustrated about in the kind of political discussion in this country is this whole like capitalism, socialism, false dichotomy, which is just like an oversimplification, like everything else is. Like everything is just like people yelling at each other and oversimplify. This is one of the things we're trying to address with SIFT. Like, there are no pure capitalists left in the world. There are no pure socialists left. I think there is a system of way to create wealth and resources, and like market-based systems are pretty good at that. There's a system for distributing those, and social-based systems are good at that. Like most societies that veer too much in one direction are absolute disasters, and like every successful society has the right balance of capitalism and socialism, and like we're one of the few countries in the U.S. that just refuses to even have that discussion, that like frames it as a conflict. So
right. And for the first time in how many decades, our health span has gone down.
Yeah. So like I don't think the answer is no capitalism. I think the answer is like healthy capitalism, but also like healthy socialism. Like that the health of framing, I think, just works well in general.
Yeah, I just think so much of the problems with work, right? The problems that work breeds have to do with just unbridled capitalism, right?
I mean, working conditions have not traditionally been better in societies or cultures that aren't capitalistic. They've probably worse. In fact,
but I'm saying worse. Unbridled capitalism.
Yeah, it's the unbridled part.
Right. I mean, it's created a lot of shitty jobs or kind of non-jobs. There's like plenty of places to hide in big companies and not really do anything. And that's kind of psychologically dissatisfying and contributes to all these like despair syndromes that people have that make them less attentive or whatever.
Yeah, I think the technology we have and the science we have now, this is really something that we talked about a lot in the SciFi-preneuership podcast, that like it gives us the ability to move big things, to understand big things, to really like change the way things are made, and gives us the responsibility to do it. So like without the right thoughtfulness, we very quickly get to various dystopian outcomes. And we had a discussion on the SciFi-preneuership podcast about I think we were talking about snow crash. And I realized, like, during that conversation, it's just interesting, like, so many of these books, like Snow Crash, like, I am a huge fan of these books. And I love, when I was reading it, I love the technology. I love the vision. I'm fascinated by all the products that they describe. I'm like, oh, I want to build these products. But like, and I think a lot of people like me kind of have that opinion. But we just ignore, like, the world that it describes. Like, the world of Snow Crash, the worlds described are, like, really shitty worlds. They're dystopian. You'd never want to live in them. But we just want to build the products that are in it, and like we don't stop to think about how like, well, like the world as described got that way because of the products that it describes. And it was literally like that kind of that basic an idea where like we don't get to just make cool stuff without thinking about how it impacts the world. And I think a lot of us have been doing that, and the good news is I think more and more people are realizing that and taking that into consideration, which I really think is going to lead to a better world.
I think SIFT is another good example. Like you don't come to such an extreme need for something like SIFT until you have a media system that functions on unbridled capitalism, meaning like there's just endless advertising, so there's endless news cycles, so there's just endless crap.
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think that problem again is capitalism bridled or unbridled. I think it's I think a common characteristic in all this that maybe is even more fundamental is systems are broken when they don't bear the true cost. Like markets work okay when the true costs are factored in. And when they're not, when the insiders basically get all the value and they push out the cost elsewhere, then you get something bad, right? So like the classic example is like the type of mining that you see in like some state, the eastern states in the US, where they just like cut off the top of a mountain and then grind it down for some trace like elements. And it's like extremely inefficient. Like you're basically like the amount of minerals that they can pull out of it is like tiny compared to like the size of the mountain that they've destroyed and the energy that they've used and the pollution they've created. And it's only economically viable because they don't pay
Right.
for that mountain and for the cleanup. They just pay for like the labor of the miners and the machinery, and and they've made that work, but it's not the true cost. And so like the environmental aspects, are pawned off on the rest of society. That's true of a lot of environmental stuff, but it's also true of a lot of like media stuff and social stuff. So like to me, Facebook targeted ads are kind of like that mountaintop removal mining. It's like, yeah, they make a relatively small amount of money per person's eyeball on like targeted ads. And that makes economic sense to them only because they don't have to pay the cost of all of the stress and anxiety and like broken democracy that they create. So like it isn't a failure of.
I mean, that $5 billion doesn't pay the tab.
I mean, but at least that's like, at least the penalty is part of the cost. So like that would be healthy. So if we had a market where the full costs were being borne, and to be profitable, you had to take into account the full costs and the full opportunities, then it would be fine. So I'm not sure that this is like unbridled capitalism. If anything, it's just like, it's corrupt. It's inefficient. Like we need healthier capitalism, just like we need healthier socialism. Crickets. Can we get a cricket sound in here?
Quite a rant.
Yeah.
When people start to hear like any criticism leveled at capitalism, everybody freaks out because they're worried that like the next thing that you're going to propose is like absolute socialism, which is not usually true.
Yeah. I think I criticize the current capitalist systems, quite a lot, and I'm comfortable with that. It's, again, I'm sensitive to the absolutist claims on either side, having grown up in a what passed for a communist or socialist country, and being, knowing where that led. It is difficult for me to kind of want to go back there. But and where we are right now in the US is, significantly better than where I was back in the Soviet Union in the late 70s, but it's also gotten worse in many ways. So it's time to fix it.
Okay, so we've answered the question that we've received kind of, I don't know how many times when we were first getting started with All Turtles. What are you guys focused on? What are the areas that you work in? And it's the areas that make people healthier and wealthier.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it healthier and wealthier, or does it just
and wise?
We basically work on naps, right? It's just early to bed. It's a nap-based economy.
I think it's more like making health and work better.
I guess what we're saying, listeners, is that we need your help with the tagline.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been workshopping our taglines, and,
except not really.
Yeah, let's pawn this off on our listeners. So
you are listening to the workshop.
Yeah, send us suggestions for what we actually focus on, because we think we know, we just can't quite express it. I remember at Evernote again, I had a really hard time describing what Evernote was in a single sentence. Like it was just hard to describe what it was. I always struggled with it. And then there's all these other companies that came up that were very clear of what they were, because they described themselves as like, oh yeah, this is like Evernote for dentists. This is like Evernote for investments. This is Evernote for, travel. And like that was clear. And I was like, what the hell? Like why can't we just be like, we're just like Evernote for everything? And that kind of cleared it up. So I think this is kind of a similar issue. It's like, we think we know what we're going to do, or what we're doing. In fact, we're pretty sure. You describe that in some words, and we're pretty good at like doing this for our products. I think each of the products we work on has actually like pretty crisp taglines and ideas. But this is right. This is, I guess, what do you call it? The cobbler's children dilemma. Mm-hmm. Like writing this for ourselves is always the last priority. So little priority that we're officially now just punting it off on our listeners. So
yeah,
send us suggestions.
So make sure you tune in next week. Our first guest of season 3 is a futurist, Amy Webb. We have a really cool conversation with her.
Yeah, Amy is great.
So if you have any questions, send us an email at hello@all-turtles.com. Marie gracefully checks all of those.
If you have suggestions for what our tagline should be, send them to hello@all-turtles.com.
Right.
If you have snarky ones, just send them directly to me.
We'll read them all out loud.
Yeah.
Or tweet us at @allturtlesco. This podcast is a production of the All Turtles Worldwide Media Empire. We recorded this episode in the world-class Donatello Studios in San Francisco, California. Thanks to everyone who made this episode possible, including Jim Metzendorf for editing, Marie McCoy-Thompson for producing, Chris Plug for his audio expertise, Micah Rivera for our artwork, and Matt Ammerman for our theme music. On behalf of Jessica Collier, Phil Libin, and yours truly, John C. Fuentes, and the rest of the All Turtles team, thanks for listening.